What up, people? Welcome to Mental Health and You. This is Cynthia Timms, your host, and thank you for joining us again. Mental Health and You, a show dedicated aiming to help to break the stigma of mental wellness, especially in communities of color. Today we're going to continue on that road. We're talking about on this episode veterans and mental health and veterans. What's happening? What's helping? What's not helping? Here to help me work this out or talk about it or is community activist, radio show host, 90.3 FM at City College, Reggie Mitchell. Thank you, Reggie.
Thank you for having me.
You're
appreciate
very
it.
welcome.
Absolutely.
Veterans and mental health.
Absolutely, yes.
Now, you're telling me that you spent 20 years in the Army?
20 years.
20 years. Tell me, what was that about? And how did you make it? Talking about mental health.
20 years, 2 tours of duty, one Afghanistan and one Iraq. How did I make it? I kept my head down as often as I could, and I prayed a lot. I prayed a lot. I mean, I became a praying fool, and I listened to a lot of soul music while riding around because you could still have headphones, whatever you needed, but you were still fighting the bad guy.
Right.
And little did I know it would take a toll on my psychic.
How so?
Seeing all the blood and
Yes.
and the gunfire, hearing all the gunfire, the explosions, the smell of death. You know, in these countries, these war-torn countries, these third world countries out there, Iraq and Afghanistan, you know, we were fighting them. We still have soldiers there. So back in 2004, when this Gulf War and this Iraqi Freedom War started, we were shipped over there for 17 months per shift. And a lot of death, a lot of fighting, a lot of people dying,
Right.
a lot of smell. I still
Must have
smell
been
that stuff
awful.
now.
My goodness.
Yes.
But let's go to the beginning, even before you get into the military. Tell me about yourself. I mean, what led you to the military?
Well, you know,
where did you grow up? Tell me about your family.
You know, growing up
life.
in the South Bronx, the South Bronx, the East Bronx, Mara Senior area of the Bronx, and
Yes.
One of 14.
14 kids?
Absolutely. My mother had 14 children. We like to say it was fashionable back then to be able to have 14 children, just pop them out one at a time. You know, every year. My father was a sailor. So every time he would come home, dock somewhere in New York City, he would come home, impregnate my mother, and leave.
One of 14 kids,
One of
y'all.
14. So we were living
Tell
in the
me
South
about,
Bronx.
I mean, how many rooms did you
Oh,
have? What
God,
was that about?
we lived in a big old Herman Monster-style house in the South Bronx. And we all lived in this house at one time. There was a time in our life that all 14 of us lived in this house. There might have been 5 of us.
You grew up in a house?
Grew up in a big old Herman Monster house that nothing worked. You know, so there might have been 3 or 4 of us in one bed. Might have been 7 of us in one room. All depends on any given night. And my mother had to deal with this all by herself because my father always was out to sea, always. And
He was out to sea because
he was a sailor,
Merchant Marine?
merchant marine.
Wow.
Absolutely,
Yes.
and we hardly ever saw him. You know.
Well, you saw him. Your mother saw him sometimes,
Yes,
at least 14 times.
absolutely.
I mean,
So it was a grand old
Yes.
time being
Yes.
being poor and black. That was a great combination. We loved it. We had
what
no
made
idea.
it so grand?
Because there was 14 of us, so we got to make each other laugh. We had to do so much to entertain one another. We didn't have any money. We had each other. We had the love of each other.
Yes.
So we made each other laugh by acting out in all kind of ways, doing silly stuff, putting sheets around us, pretending to be different characters, and you know, it was a great time. I loved that era in the 50s and in the early 60s.
And where do you rank in the 14 children?
I'm the 3rd youngest. I have a
Really?
younger brother under me and a younger sister under me.
Wow.
And everybody goes like stair steps, you know, like 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25.
It's amazing.
Yeah, everybody went
So
like
tell
their
me, I
stuff.
said, okay, so you said your father was away at sea because he was a
Absolutely.
merchant marine.
Yes.
So what support? I mean, I guess y'all supported each other.
We
Am I?
supported each other through social services.
Oh,
They were our best
okay.
friends. The peanut butter, the cheese, all that stuff. Who was going to take that shopping cart and go stand online? Not me, not me, not me. We would say, oh boy, it's embarrassing. Oh no, we can't do that. I don't want to do it. Oh, get out there and do it. It's your turn.
What toll did it take on your mother, Vinny? I mean, still 14
To be
kids by,
honest,
by herself, or
without
did you
me,
have an
without me
extended
crying and all
family?
that stuff, my mother became an alcoholic as a result of that.
Wow.
The bottle was her friend. The bottle was her escape. It was her escape, and
So when she was escaping,
she
y'all
was at
entertained each other.
yes, with no regrets. We just entertained each other. The streets got some of us. Matter of fact, the streets got all of us at some point.
Right.
At some point, we all became a part of the streets, whether it was using or dealing. We all became part of the streets at some point. And, I look back at that now because both my parents have passed away now. A couple of brothers passed away, a couple of sisters passed away as a result of active addiction. There's a few of us still left because there were 14 of us, so there's a good many of us left, sprinkled all over New York City. We look back at that now, and boy, it was the greatest time of our life.
Yeah.
I don't even know if the life I'm living right now,
And why do you call it the greatest time?
because we had each other. We didn't have nothing, but we had each other.
Yes.
People want stuff now before they want each other now. They want material gain now. Nobody wants each other anymore. Nobody wants to be at home with each other.
Was there uncles, aunts, cousins,
They would pass through.
grandparents?
They were all of that. It was
Yes.
family everywhere. We had each other. We didn't have much, but we had each other. Today, people want big screen TVs. They want fancy cars. They want brand new $200 sneakers. And they don't care if they don't even know each other in the family. They don't care if they ever sit down to the dinner table and eat. Just give me another $200 pair of sneakers, Mom. Or just give me that new iPhone, Mom. No one sits down to the dinner table anymore. No one communicates with each other as a family unit anymore. Those days are long gone. So we had each other.
So we forward.
Yes.
Where did the military come into play?
It's funny because the military actually came into play
Because I
during
remember back in the day,
Yeah.
when I used to think about the military before I actually did. That's a story for another day, guys, or maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
They were really military recruiters in the neighborhood.
Yes.
I think even more so today. I remember there was one on 3rd Avenue. There
Yes.
was one, on
Absolutely.
Fordham Road.
Fordham Road. Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
They used to come to the school. They used to come to the welfare office.
that's right. That's right.
The unemployment office.
Oh, and they still do. They come to places like that still.
So
Absolutely.
where did they come to you?
I actually joined rather late.
Oh.
I actually joined in my about the time I was like 30. I joined the Army when I was about 30.
And why did you join? What were you
yeah,
looking for that you didn't get at home?
Well, by that time I was long gone from home. I was with my first wife. It wasn't really going great. It could have been better, but she was in a different direction with her life, and I was at a different direction, so to speak. And I realized I was just taking a walk one day. I was on 14th Street, Union Square, just shopping, buying something, just browsing, and I saw the sign. It says, "Be all you can be."
Right.
Travel the world, get money for college. So I looked at myself and I looked inside my soul. And I said, wow, I'm not really doing nothing at home. Let me check it out.
How old were you about?
30.
30. So you were in college?
No.
Did you graduate from high school?
No. I had
Okay.
got my GED by then.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to night school and got my GED by then. I was working a regular job, but,
And did you have any friends who had gone in the military? Any family?
no. No one in my family has ever been to the military. I'm the only one besides my father. So I don't know. It was just the allure of that sign. Be all you can
Yeah.
be. Travel the world. Get money for college. I said, okay. If I go back home, I'm going to argue with the missus about something silly. It's going to turn to a heated argument like it has done previous times. So
Yeah.
I went in there and talked to the recruiter. Next thing you know, I was in Fort Hamilton signing up, being shipped off to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
That's a long way from the Bronx, Reggie.
30 years old. The dead of winter, like October, November.
So talk about that night. Did your wife go at the time go
I got
with
a
you?
divorce
Really?
when I came back from basic training. I went through basic training and all that.
And how was that?
She didn't really, basic training was terrible. I was 30 years old from the South Bronx. They hated me. They hated everything about me. They would call me old man. Oh, old man, you think you all that because you're from New York. Drop down and give me 50. Just because you're from New York, old man. So they hated me.
Yes.
Every time I'd be in the mess hall getting my lunch, some old drill sergeant would come bump me. Get out my way, old man. Let me get in front of you. Matter of fact, get down and give me 20 because you're an old man and you're from New York. I heard about you. So it would go all over the base that you had this old man at 30 years old from New York trying to be a soldier amongst these 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds. But I dusted them. Oh, man, they couldn't keep up with me. They couldn't keep up with me. I tore them up. I became the favorite.
So you got out of boot camp.
I got out of boot camp. I came
And
home.
where did they send you? Where were you sent?
Virginia. They sent me to Fort Lee, Virginia, to
Okay.
a cooking school in Fort Lee, Virginia. They teach you how to cook and supplies and all that stuff, everything about the kitchen and all that, because that's the only job they was going to give me.
About what time of the year? What time of the year this was like?
This was in 1989, 1990.
Okay.
So they sent me to this cooking school, and I loved it, because I was learning.
Right.
I was learning. I was
This was
far away
right
from home.
before the first Gulf War, right?
Right.
Right.
So I was learning everything. Fine. I didn't know that one day I'd get dropped off in Kuwait, and all I would see was sand and camels. That would come at least a few years later.
Wow.
But I went home and got a divorce and didn't look back.
Listen, Reggie, hold that thought because we're going to go to break now because I want to
Absolutely.
know about this, and I'm sure our viewers too. We're going to be right back, and Reggie's going to tell all about it. Be well.
Sure, I look cute now, but when my owner lost his job, it was rough. I was living on the street, and one night, me and this Cocker Spaniel got into it so bad, I wound up looking like an ice cream cone. I cried a little bit, but thankfully I got rescued, so I'm running, I'm jumping, all back to my old self. And I'm ready to give unconditional love, even if you put a lampshade on my head. Sure, I look cute now, but when...
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. And as soon as I start to make my breakfast, Hamilton is right there. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath. He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties. He knows he's a pretty big deal. I mean, look at this little face. How could you not love him?
Wow. Welcome back to Mental Health and You. We're talking about the military and mental health. Mental health and the military with our guest today, esteemed Reggie.
Retired Sergeant Mitchell.
Retired Sergeant Reggie Mitchell.
All right.
United States Army, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And before we went to break, Reggie, you were talking about getting out of boot camp.
Right.
You went to boot camp in Missouri.
Right.
This New York kid, 30-year-old.
Yes.
In the company of boys.
Yes.
But you really show who you were. You really, turned the table on them. They send you now to Virginia.
Fort Lee, yes.
Fort Lee, Virginia. Not Fort Lee, New Jersey. Fort
Fort Lee,
Lee.
Virginia.
What was that about?
That was a school for supply and cooking. was a cooking school and supply school. We would learn all of our stuff about cooking and supplies because eventually.
Was that your choice or?
No, that was my grades.
Okay.
Everything is based on your academics,
Right.
what kind of job you get, what you score on the SAT or the military type of SAT.
Right.
And that would determine where they would put you. So whatever I scored didn't allow me to go into a technology field or anything like that. It allowed me to go into the kitchen
And how
and the
was
supply.
that? So how was
I
that?
loved it. I could eat a lot. I remember I grew up poor and black in the South Bronx. I was in heaven. Wow. And plus I was learning. See, the whole thing they thought they were doing me a disservice, but they were doing me a service. They were teaching me, and I didn't have to pay for it for the most part. I was learning everything I could learn, and then my age became the best thing ever. Because
How
now the
so?
young people were
Yes.
coming up to me, asking me about certain things, and my wisdom took them over.
Now.
You know, I became like their parents. You know, so
I
they would
hear
come
you.
to me for all kind of things.
It's like
you know?
like what? What did they want to know from? Were they curious about New York? Were they curious about you as a black man? And
They-
how many other black men look like you down there?
Sprinkles.
Sprinkles?
Yeah, but they were more curious about my presence, my age,
What brought you here at
what brought
30?
me here at 30, New York streets, Apollo Theater, Harlem, all the things they had heard about. They were curious about a lot of that, and they also could confide in me because they understand that I might have been through a lot of stuff that they are getting ready to go through. Like why are they in the Army at 17 years old? What was going on at their homes? You know, so they were curious about a lot of stuff, and I became their mentor.
Okay.
You know, it all turned around from that old man in in Missouri, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, to now I was the guy that was people were running this. Well, go ask Private Mitchell. Go ask Private Mitchell. He would know. He's an old guy. He would know, or whatever the case may be. So it worked in my favor. And as I navigated through the Army, it kept working more in my favor.
So this is 1989,
Yes.
1990.
I came home from Fort Lee in 1992.
Okay.
Wound up getting a rooming house on 148th Street in St. Nicholas Avenue.
But you were still in the military.
I just came home. I was to continue the rest of my tour here in New York.
Stationed where?
I was stationed in Queens. I was stationed in not in Atlanta.
Was it Fort Totten?
No, it was Fort Hamilton.
Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn.
Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn.
Okay.
I was stationed in
And
Arizona.
what was that about? What was how was Fort Hamilton? I remember being processed back
Fort
there.
Hamilton was.
But yes, it's Brooklyn, it's New York.
It's Brooklyn, it's New York, but I was still young in the military, so I
Yes.
still had to do everything. You know, I had to watch what I said to certain people. I had to watch the way I looked at certain people, even in Fort Hamilton at that time.
Right.
You know, because you're walking down the road in Fort Hamilton and you may see somebody with a lot of rank and you're supposed to salute them and do certain things. If you didn't, you know, you would
Right.
find your name being called somewhere in one of the meeting rooms and be like, oh, Private Mitchell didn't salute me when he
Right.
walked by me. What are we going to do with him?
My goodness. So let's fast forward. The war is breaking out.
The war's breaking out,
First Gulf War.
and we're training.
Where did you get your papers? Did they put you on the first plane out to Afghanistan? Or?
We got our papers in Jamaica, Queens,
Okay.
at an armory out there. And we started training in Fort Drum up in by Canada.
Okay.
And we started training hard. And
So you're sent there. You're training
sent
hard.
there
You're
to
training
Fort
hard.
Drum to
and
train.
what was being in Afghanistan like? Tell me.
it was
Tell us.
poor, ravaged, because America done went through there and bombed everything. So it was poor, it was ravaged, it was
And what
no
did
running
that
water.
do? What did that do? I mean,
It made me appreciate America,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, you know, but we were there for a totally different thing. We were there to fight the enemy. You know, we wasn't there to do anything. We thought we was there to help them out, but we were there to take that whole country over. And that's what we did for the most part.
How many tours of duty did you have?
2.
Two.
And they were long. They were long. You know, by this time I had settled in, I had got some rank. And so I was basically, you know, settled in, so to speak. And I kind of knew what was happening.
So now you're a more mature man. You're in the Army.
Yes, I'm more mature. And time is going by, but remember, I was 30.
Right.
Now I'm 45, 47, in the middle of Afghanistan and Iraq.
Who did you-
49.
I guess what I'm asking, you know, you're in the middle of Iraq, you're in the middle of Afghanistan,
Right.
in the middle of all this nothing, this barrenness. What did that do to you and your fellow soldiers emotionally? You say you were there to
Stripped us down, actually. It stripped us down.
How
mentally.
so?
There was so much going on.
You were being prepared physically to
Right.
go. Well, what about
But
them mentally?
You wasn't being prepared mentally. They didn't care about your mental. They didn't care about your physical. You know, how many guns you can carry, how much ammunition you can carry, how many bad guys you could kill. They didn't care if you couldn't sleep at night. They didn't care about none of that stuff. You know, they didn't care if you would come home and you couldn't sleep at night and you would be angry and you would just go into these outbursts when you come home. All of that was going to happen when you came home. Because they didn't care about none of that out there. Because you wasn't going nowhere. What would you think they was going to send you home? No, no matter what you went through out there, you were going to stay there until your tour was over. Not that you came home in a pine box.
No, you're a sergeant. You're over men.
Yeah, I have a team. I have a team now. I got a team
And
now.
so, how did you keep them together? How did you, when you saw this?
I was older, remember?
Right.
I was still older. I was their parents' ages, remember? So their parents confided in me. Their parents would send me letters and tell me, oh, can you make sure you watch over my son? He's young, he respects you, and stuff like that. So we became a family. Because the team that you had was the team that you was going to stay with your whole tour. You would have the same group of guys.
And how did you bring each other up? You had each other.
Soul
But what did you
music.
do?
Soul music.
Soul music?
Soul music. We had music. They had cities out there just like America, built just for the soldier.
So that was a good coping.
They had McDonald's, Burger King, they had Gold's Gym, they had big fancy movie theaters, they had big churches, they had everything to make you forget that you were out there fighting.
But you were out there fighting.
You were out there fighting. Any given moment, your camp could be overthrown by the bad guys. And rockets and mortar could be shot into. But during that time, like I said, you were with the same group of guys, so you became a band of brothers. And you stuck together, you talked about stuff, and you talked about your aspirations, and you talked about what you was going to do if you ever got out of here, and stuff like that, and da-da-da. Sergeant Mitchell, you need to bring me home. You know, Sergeant Mitchell, you need to blah, 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 because I want to one day be married, have kids. And we all came home.
So, yes.
Our team came home.
So you're home now. In these last few minutes, I know we got to do a part 2, Reggie.
Yes.
But you're home now.
PTSD.
PTSD.
Post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm dealing with that now.
Wow.
Military's paying me and giving me a lot of medications and writing a lot of documentation.
And how's your brothers and sisters?
They're going through the same thing. A lot of them came home and became police officers, correction officers. They're losing their mind. They're out there racial profiling, killing our own people, and they're our own people. But they say they got to get home too. Sergeant Mitchell, I got to get home too. Everybody's not retired like you.
Wow. I remember when I was on this crisis line. I used to work a 24-hour crisis line. I got many calls from veterans talking about this post-traumatic stress.
Absolutely.
Not being able to get back or come back to civilian life.
Right.
Because they didn't get the help.
Right.
And the military didn't really want to know about your mental health.
They didn't.
But it didn't mean that it wasn't real.
No.
That post-traumatic stress is real.
It's real.
So you're talking about, so as a peer now, as a veteran, in our last few minutes, you've become a community activist.
Absolutely.
You have your own show.
Absolutely.
A City College, 90.3 FM, y'all. So what can you tell, if you could speak to veterans, what would you say? Is there hope? Is there any inkling that you can? What would you want to say for those who are struggling?
There are veterans groups out here willing to help you. You just got to be willing to give it a shot. There's veteran hospitals that are willing to help you. There are services for you, both financially, mentally, and emotionally. There are classes, there are groups. I go to a lot of groups. I'm at the Kingsbridge Armory, James J. Peters. You can come up in there and you can get all the help you can need, and there are actually groups, and we can cope with this. You know, we don't have to jump off a roof or anything crazy like that. We understand, but please get your services. The services are there. They're not ever going to go anywhere. They're going to be there until you come sign for them, because there are so many veterans that are homeless, but they have services, but they just don't want to go.
Why you think that is? Why you think they don't want to go?
Because they don't want to go because of the shame. They don't want to go because of the paperwork, because it's going to take a minute to get your services. But once you get them, you're good. And they shy away from that. They don't want to go because they just don't feel like it. They don't feel like nobody cares. But there are veteran PTS groups within all the armories all over the world. And you have the vet groups that are out there. They have the side groups, vet groups. In every borough, every city. You know, there's one right out here. There's one right out here on Monroe, over here by Monroe. Yeah, they're vet groups. So they need to get the services. The services are available.
Okay.
I'm getting them.
Good.
Took a little while, but I'm getting them.
Good. And it's helping you?
It's helping me immensely.
Wow.
Because I talk with other vets and I deal with other vets.
So what are your skills? What are your coping skills? You're talking to vets. You got this radio station.
I'm also a certified recovery coach.
There you go.
Absolutely.
And what is that?
That's helping peer-to-peer,
Yes.
helping each other, you know, deal with each other's pains and ills, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's mismanagement of finances, money, relationships. I'm a motivational speaker, and I see the one. But I do a lot, you know. I do my part, I like to say.
Well, I want to thank you, Reggie. I want to thank you, Mr. Miller, Sergeant Miller, for coming to Mental Health and You and sharing this story. You know, and I urge veterans to take heed to what Reggie is saying, to Sergeant Miller. There's help. We're going to do a part 2. We're going to do more shows. We're going to talk more about this because it's necessary. I want to thank, as we close, I want to thank the staff and engineers of Bronxnet. This is Mental Health and You, y'all. You take care of yourself. Be good to yourself. Peace and light. Good day.